Welcome everybody to this show at Motilal Oswal. My name is Jayesh Faria. I look after the wealth management business. I have 25 years experience managing clients' money, and today we have a very interesting panel put forward for all of you to recap what's happened in 2023 and do a little bit of crystal ball gazing on 2024. Let me introduce panel to you. On my right, we have Kishore Narne. We have Siddharth. We have Chandan and we have Navneet. And I would like them to introduce yourself before we start.
Myself, Kishore Narne. I am head of commodities and currencies for Motilal Oswal, and I have more than 23 years experience in these markets so far.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Siddharth Khemka. I head the retail research at Motilal Oswal. I've been tracking fundamentals and have experience of more than 18 years in the market.
Hi friends, I'm Chandan Tapadia, heading technical and derivatives research at Motilal Oswal. Working in the industry from last 15 years, having CMT, CFT, visiting faculty for a couple of B schools. So passionate about the market and derivatives segment.
Hello friends, I'm Navneet Damani. I take care of the research piece for commodities and FX at Motilal Oswal. Been part of the industry for about 18 years, ever since this commodities market has started, and happily enjoying it.
I think the year when we started 2023, we have a very diverse view when US was increasing interest rate and China was talking about cutting interest rate. And today any discussion, I think, without discussing China is not over. So what's your take for 2023 of China, and specifically keeping in mind that they are the force which the whole world is looking up, and they are clearly coming up and telling that we are one of those who US also can't ignore. So in that context, what do you feel about
Of
that?
course, I think, see, nobody can ignore China today. It's a mammoth economy. Geopolitically, it's extremely important. So that's the weight balancing country today. जहाँ तक macro की सवाल है, I think this is a very peculiar situation where an emerging market country, such a massive country, world's second largest economy, going into deflationary scenario, where you're the extremely opposite, where the developed economy is sitting on a high inflation and highest interest rates, and the gap is so much. It's never been that much gap actually in the real rates, especially. So how this could be eventually evolving is the critical question. So मेरे हिसाब से actually China is on the influx of large hockey stick kind of a growth in the next couple of years. They have done a lot of monetary easing measures. मेरे हिसाब से अभी इन लोग फिजिकल ईजिंग में जाएंगे, बिकॉज मॉनेटरी ईजिंग मोस्टली हो गया है, जीरो इंटरेस्ट रेट के नज़दीक में आ गया है, एंड दे विल गोइंग टू फिजिकल ईजिंग. सो फिजिकल ईजिंग के लिए चाइना में एक बड़ा कॉम्प्लेक्स है, एंड ऑल्सो दे हैव चैलेंजेस, बिकॉज आप कैसे करेंगे फिजिकल ईजिंग? आपको यू हैव टू बिल्ड इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, गवर्नमेंट स्पेंडिंग हैज टू गो अप, देन दे हैव ओवर capacity in infrastructure, then how will you spend more, right? So I'm sure you might have read a lot of stories where they are breaking down and rebuilding it, kind of things, right? So it's a challenge for them to increase fiscal expenditure and fiscal stimulus, but certainly they will do, and a massive growth is expected. Maybe the growth you will able to see in somewhere in April, May 24 kind of scenario in the next 3-4 months. You'll be able to see in the indicators. At this point of time, data is not showing, but on ground there is a lot of feedback that things have improved significantly, especially commodities like copper are actually started showing it in the prices actually.
So just wanted to ask, everybody talks about US and China. It seems like सबने यूरोप को write off कर दिया है. Can it be the surprise economy for 2024?
Not really. Actually, Europe, though, you can really very safely write off, actually, because they don't have either demographic dividends nor and they have a big problem of immigrants. The explosion of immigrants from Africa, Middle East, because of the geopolitical stress right now from Israel का जो conflict के वजह से है, Libya
So the biggest hit from the geopolitical issues has been to the
They are
European
overburdened by
nations.
the immigrants. they are overburdened by the energy prices because of the Ukraine conflict and inflation. ये जो inflation है ना, इनको कम होने के लिए बहुत time लगेगा, and they don't have that kind of income generating assets where you can actually surpass this. तो मेरे हिसाब से it's going to at least 2 साल के लिए मेरे हिसाब से, because 24 में British elections है, US elections है, again we have elections
Indian
here.
elections है.
There's a massive eventful year it's going to be, but still safely I can say that Europe will be playing a second fiddle. It will not be a center of the.
So what has actually another interesting concept that has come up, हमने सबने चाइना प्लस वन बहुत साल से सुना है,
Yeah.
बट अभी जो किशोर ने बताया लास्ट 2 साल से पोस्ट कोविड और स्पेशली आफ्टर दी वेरियस जियोपॉलिटिकल इश्यूज वेयर विच लेड टू द कॉस्ट ऑफ मैन्युफैक्चरिंग rising like anything in Europe. The new concept that have come up is Europe plus one. Companies from Europe, they are looking to relocate their manufacturing out of Europe. It's no longer sustainable to do any activity there. So India definitely sits in the right place to benefit out of that. Well, obviously a large portion of that goes to a lot of these Asian countries, but India too benefits from that with the kind of policies that the government has been making, the focus on manufacturing.
इलेक्ट्रिसिटी प्राइसेस देख लो, 4 पाउंड वाला इलेक्ट्रिसिटी प्राइस 60 पाउंड हो गया, तो मतलब इट्स नो मोर सस्टेनेबल फॉर एनी इंडस्ट्री.
जस्ट टू एड जैस, काफ़ी इंटरेस्टिंग डिस्कशन है. चाइना प्लस वन, यूरोप प्लस वन. इस क्वेश्चन ऑल अबाउट रेटिंग एंड रैंकिंग. इफ यू लुक एट द भारत विश्व की 5वीं सबसे बड़ी अर्थव्यवस्था है. चाइना, यूएस और चाइना है, उनको बाद में डील करेंगे. आई थिंक वी आर $3.75 ट्रिलियन इकोनॉमी. जापान और जर्मनी 4.2, 4.6. The way we are doing, liquidity is there, new startups are, I think will take few years. We need to just $8.8 trillion. And I think भारत जो विश्व की 5वीं सबसे बड़ी अर्थव्यवस्था है, तीसरे पायदान के लिए पूरा तैयार है. I think over the next 5 years, I'm not talking about government, I'm talking about 5 years, the focus will be how India can be the top 3rd economy of this world. Key factor, again, China plus one, liquidity, new startup. अब बात कर रहे हो इंडिया में, all the companies, like most of the companies, those who are manufacturing their laptop or mobile in US and other country, they are coming to India. Whatever be the reason. So I think these are the value additions.
चंदन जी, मेरा थोड़ा डिफरेंट व्यू है. एज हम लोग बहुत टाइम से चाइना प्लस बोल रहे हैं, अभी सिद्धार्थ यूरोप प्लस बोल रहे हैं, बट इंडिया को जो एडवांटेज आना चाहिए था चाइना प्लस वन में, जैसे ही वाज गिविंग एग्जांपल के छोटे कंट्रीज विल बेनिफिट टुडे इन द शू वियतनाम और क्लोथ्स बांग्लादेश, दे हैव बीन एबल टू यूटिलाइज दिस फार मोर बेटर. तो हम इंडिया में बोलते हैं अच्छा गवर्नेंस है, ये सब चाइना प्लस वन के लिए सब करना चाहिए, बट एक्चुअल रियलिटी में वो तो बहुत छोटा फ्रिक्शन है. तो इंडिया कैसे उसको कैपिटलाइज करे जब हम बोल रहे हैं कि गवर्नमेंट का इंटेंशन है, अच्छी पॉलिसीज हैं, बट रियलिटी में तो वो दिख नहीं रहा है.
I'll add one thing. Why everyone is talking about public sector? If you ask Siddharth, me and anyone, everyone will talk about what is the next focus, CPSE. Central Public Sector Enterprises.
करेक्ट.
In last couple of years, entire focus was building India.
Right.
I think now focus will be building administrative government machinery.
Okay.
And here you will get the reflection of how India can shape to our new.
See, one of the critical point which we also have to see is that ki, especially in this Cold War kind of a scenario between US and China, right? This is existent, right? Literally, it's a Cold War going on. And if you see last history, in when the world wars happened and both the world wars का results आप देखेंगे, and उसके बाद ये Cold War के टाइम पे भी when you have to choose sides, because अभी क्या है ना, एक चीज़ चल रहा है कि whether India is testing the relationship with US or not, diplomatic relationships की मैं बात कर रहा हूँ, are we friend with US or not, is it going to affect us negatively, positively, because हम क्या करेंगे अगर कल actually choose करना पड़ा कि चाइना और US के बीच में हम क्या करेंगे, right? I think our foreign policy has been extremely calculative and very what you call weighed properly and balanced कि हम न्यूट्रल रहेंगे, राइट? हमको यूएस का दोस्ती भी चाहिए, रशियन एमिनेशन भी चाहिए, चाइना के साथ हाँ हमको ये भी चाहिए. सो इफ यू सी हिस्ट्री ना, the neutral countries have benefited the best. Even even the winners in the war, Second World War winners है ना, उनसे भी ज़्यादा न्यूट्रल वाले को ज़्यादा बेनिफिट मिला पोस्ट वॉर रिकवरीज में. So if the situation has to go, we are there are two jurisdictions or two areas which will significantly benefit who are taking this neutral view. One is Middle East, second is India. These are going to remain neutral, and any of these situation अभी आ रहे हैं geopolitics में, we will benefit significantly from this.
So that was my question, Navneet, for you. Globally, there are two wars. A lot of people forget that this is second anniversary of Ukraine war. Now we've seen another war coming up, and he said that like India, Middle East has been neutral. I was a little perplexed by why is that then crude oil prices stayed there or went down. Ideally, it should be the other way around, right? When gold goes up or a global scenario happens, the crude oil price first reflects. In 2023, we have seen that, in fact, coming down rather than going up. So, what's been your take on that?
Well, before we jump to crude, we've talked about China, and as an analyst, we cannot miss talking about China because China is 50% of whatever you consume today. So any metal that you talk about, 50% of the production as well as consumption comes out of China. And the economy from 2002-3 onwards till 2013 has been growing at a rapid pace. At one point they were growing about 14-15%. And to see it growing at 4-5%, it's not surprising because they are an $18 trillion economy. So they cannot be growing at the pace which the world is got used to or probably we've seen in the past. So these 3 years post-COVID the world opened faster than what China did, and gradually they took a little longer. For the last 1 year, there have been n number of talks that China economy started, the kickstart is going to be around the corner. But for last say probably 9-10 months, nothing big bang has happened. Deflationary environment has set in. They have had to bring down rates from as high as 11-12% to about 1% on the short-term lending rates. And but the numbers over the last 3 months that we are seeing is pretty convincing that China is going to be back on track. The China plus one story might continue, but it is not that you can rule out China.
That's not going to hurt China. So it might China plus one policy might help the world,
but help India
that does not hurt China.
Yeah, it will
because
not be
China
very detrimental
domestic
for China.
consumption is going to replace that export demand which they are going to lose to this plus one policy.
One is domestic consumption, and I also feel that they become factory to the world, right? You can't ignore. Overnight,
They
you can't
are,
build
but-
scale or
but-
capacity what China is.
When India is trying to get some of that market share of that manufacturing, that will not really hurt them because they are no more. I'm not saying they are no more dependent on export markets, but their domestic market became very strong. So their domestic consumption, the people who are coming to that discretionary spending levels are far more higher than in India. The number of people who can consume are far more higher. So that's actually going to replace that.
Well, their housing construction have started to pick up. The car sales have started to pick up. They are as good as pre-COVID levels. 50% of the electric automobiles sold across the globe is sold in China. So in the last 3 years, they have surpassed what they had to do in 2025. They have already done it in 2023. So I don't see any reason that why we are undermining that China probably is going to be an outlier. The world will go faster.
I think as
It
Chandan
is
said,
just
I
a
think the
consolidation
petroleum
phase.
is,
In the technical term, it's just a consolidation phase what China is going through, and probably the bounce is going to be very significant that the world will see in
So just
2024-25.
to ask Navneet, so आप बोलना चाहते हो कि Chinese economy grow करेगा तो commodity prices will remain stable or it will go up?
Definitely, we have been voting for commodity prices, particularly metals, to go up for the last couple of quarters. But as I mentioned, China has not delivered to the fashion what the world was anticipating. But I don't believe that maybe in the first quarter of 24 or second quarter of 24, you might see, as you mentioned, a hockey stick kind of a return from China. And whenever China starts to press the throttle, it is going to be a massive spurt in the base metal prices. Particularly,
What does that mean for India? So if you see that metal prices, especially non-ferrous or precious is more to do, and especially gold, more to do with, I think, investment scenario. But if you look at other metals, as you said, 50% they consume, they are the largest producer as well as their consumption. But if that's the scenario, what does that mean for the world and especially India?
Well, Siddharth did mention that manufacturing numbers are pretty robust because of metal prices being lower and that advantage which manufacturing companies got. I don't think that kind of advantage will be available over the next couple of quarters because prices, I see maybe 15-20% bare minimum upside in some of the metals over the next, say, maybe 6 months to 12 months. So if that is going to happen, either price alteration has to happen within the manufacturing sector, or they are going to have to hedge their position or probably pay out of their pockets. Whatever is going to happen, it is going to get aligned. Maybe
But that's bring me to your sectorial question to you.
I just add. So when he's talking about China, I'm not telling that. See, India can outperform. China will perform. India will perform. But important part is we are now number one, not in terms of economy, in terms of Jansankhya Janadhar. And I think that is the main point that will help us to get the growth part.
And we are also number one in terms of GDP growth. Be it the IMF earning GDP growth forecast, our own RBI expects next year growth to be around 7%.
The highest and the fastest growing from that
Highest and
perspective,
fastest growing large economy. So that brings me to that question that you are saying.
So can you just clarify for the audience, what do you mean by we are the fastest in GDP? Or in terms of size, what you said? We are number one, as he mentioned.
In terms of population, Jansankhya Janadhar.
Population hai, in terms of growth, GDP growth, agar if you see IMF, they are predicting us to grow at 6.3% for the next 2 years. So FY24
Top
and
line nominal
FY25.
GDP growth.
Okay, that's a real GDP growth, 6.3%. And our own RBI is forecasting about 7% growth for this year. So this will be the highest among the emerging economies.
At this point of time.
At this point in time, yes. Also, if you include the developed economy, this will be the highest and the fastest growth in terms of economic GDP growth.
So Siddharth is saying basically कि हम बनाएंगे आत्मनिर्भर भारत और हम खाएंगे और चाइना बनाएगा वो भी हम ही खाएंगे तो that is
वो तो थोड़ा I think ज़्यादा हो जाएगा because we forget that they are also a larger populated
That will
country.
take time. We are growing faster compared to
Fastest,
whatever
yeah.
you.
That I think relatively.
But if you have to surpass
perspective.
someone, then that will take time.
That's right.
Right?
That's
So
right.
that's why बोला कि अभी एक दो country को surpass करते हैं, then there will be
We are
gear up
already
for
in
the
top
next.
5. So
Yeah.
you rightly said the gap between third
And I
and
think
fourth is
the
not that
entire
big for us to.
Economic focus will be on the consumption.
It makes things even more interesting for crude actually कि अगर चाइना इतना फास्ट ग्रो कर रहा है एंड आपको जियोपॉलिटिक्स स्ट्रेस है स्टिल क्रूड इज नॉट गोइंग अप चाइना इज आई थिंक सेकंड लार्जेस्ट कंज्यूमर
well coming to that point we saw crude adding gains of about 25% during the Russia-Ukraine war.
Correct.
But in the last war between Israel and Hamas, it added about 8% gains. Whereas it was in the heart of Middle East where this action was happening and only 8% were gains. And that also evaporated within 5 trading sessions.
But I think even these gains are they driven by wars or actually driven by production cuts?
Actually, that's what I'm
production
coming
cuts
to.
हुआ.
So it is no more geopolitical events that is impacting crude at this
Impacting
point.
the world.
For the last couple of years, they have been at the back of the mind, but it is largely production cut and demand supply scenario.
It's a
which
human
is,
tendency. You find reason and you find the quick reasons which your mind can digest.
so
you're
ad
saying
hoc
from
spurts
that
are welcome by the geopolitical, but most of the alignment is largely happening because of the demand supply scenario. We've seen massive cuts coming from Middle East, Russia, and other parts of the world in crude oil. And that has led to the spurt in prices from maybe $70 when we started the year to about $95. And today, as we speak, we are back to $72.
So 95 से 75 आने में नीचे आने में उसके बावजूद भी they have extended production cuts. Saudi has extended cuts, or even Russia has extended. I think 5 million barrels.
yeah,
take off.
almost 5 million barrels.
Almost
of
5
production
million
cuts.
barrels of
Out of
oil
100
is
million
taken off
barrel
from the
5
market.
million is out.
Still, we came from 95 to 75.
So just to add, Siddharth can add more, but trust me, like India is among the top country who import crude, right? यदि crude का price set हो गया and currency थोड़ा संभल जाए या इन दोनों चीजें बैलेंस हो जाए तो I think that will be win-win situation for India. And balance of payment is the like India is a country जहाँ पे deficit रहता है and crude is the main reason.
Main reason. That's
So all these factors जो आप बात कर रहे हैं somehow crude stable हो रहा है and currency stable हो रहा है there is a win-win situation for country.
तो इंडिया का और दो फेवरेट एसेट क्लास का भी बात कर लेते हैं. आपने क्रूड कर लिया फ्रॉम इम्पोर्ट बिल. सेकंड टू नवनीत इज गोल्ड. दैट इज ऑल्सो अ लार्ज एक्सचेकर आइटम हमारे इंडियन पर्सपेक्टिव से. तो 50-55 हज़ार हो जाने के बाद लोगों को लगता है कि अभी गोल्ड महंगा है.
60,000 हो गया.
अब 60,000 हो गया है. बट वो पर्सपेक्टिव में व्हेन यू सी द इम्पोर्ट नंबर्स तो इम्पोर्ट कंटिन्यूज राइट. दैट नंबर इज नॉट शोइंग दैट सडनली इंडियंस हैव स्टॉप बाइंग गोल्ड और द नैरेटिव ऑफ सेंट्रल बैंक बाइंग इज ऑल्सो गोन. सो who's buying the gold in India?
So before coming to gold, probably we will have a check on what is the outlook for crude, say probably in the year 2024. Well, Chandan is outrightly bullish on India. That is really visible, and I wouldn't be surprised that next year is going to be some pain coming in from crude oil prices. We've had our share of production cuts. we've had demand dull scenario, and that is what is kind of reflecting on crude oil prices, that they are not holding at highs of about $100. We are at $70.
But you see a pain coming in into crude
Yeah,
oil. you're
definitely.
saying,
So
from an
most
extra
of these production cuts are likely to end on 31st of December.
Okay.
Only a handful of them will be rolled over, so probably by a couple of months. So there is going to be a dearth of supply which is going to come in, and I see a lot of pent up demand also likely to come in, maybe from China, maybe from India. US was under the influence of a so-called recession, but that's not the case anymore.
Right.
So that kind of demand is also going to be reflective maybe in the second quarter of 23, because winters are generally dull. So once as we approach the second half of 24, or probably the second quarter of 24, I see a recovery in crude oil prices, and that recovery could be about as high as 20-25% from current levels.
So 20-25% ऊपर जाएगा.
Yeah,
ऊपर
so
जाएगा. So
I
that's,
wouldn't be surprised seeing
negative for both of you.
No,
from
we
that
are not
perspective.
negative. We
90
always,
could be on
No,
cards.
I'm saying the impact.
so what I understand, we always believe downs are temporary, ups are permanent. You have seen COVID, you have seen the recent budget, you have seen the recent DIs, FI selling. Indian market liquidity, SIP money is doing the wonderful job for India. जितना डीप आता है ना उससे डबल स्पीड से चलता है. सो इवन क्रूड कैन करेक्ट बाय 20%. दैट विल गिव अपॉर्चुनिटी एंड देन मार्केट विल मूव विद द डबल स्पीड. दैट काइंड ऑफ सिस्टम एंड सेटअप is visible if you look at the technical
Which
data.
you're
or
saying
derivatives
already in place from India perspective.
data. Right. And that is the reason that why I'm slightly turning more bullish than
More
what other
bullish
people are
than
talking.
we can hear.
So
Yeah, Navneet.
and coming to your second question, gold, यहाँ से कहाँ?
हाँ.
So we are already at 61-62,000 as we speak, and we've seen a massive bull run in gold prices. For the last 3 years, they've delivered about 40% kind of returns. Last year also
Actually, if
started.
I'm not wrong, last 2 years, gold is the best performing asset class across the world. That's
It is
across
one of the
asset classes. That's the
Why
best
you believe
performing.
this year the equity.
Yeah, this
Equity
year-
and bitcoins have been an outlier this year, but yeah,
last 6 months.
last
Yes,
6 months. But otherwise, largely gold has
Post-COVID,
had a
actually,
reasonable share of run up. So we started the year on a pretty flat note. Then we added about 10% gain on China reopening. Then a little bit of cool off, and Israel-Hamas war added to the fire, and we kind of closing the year at about 14% gains. On the domestic front also we are at lifetime highs. On the international front also we are at lifetime highs. Now what's the way forward for here? Geopolitical tensions are going to be the part of bullion market, and generally higher inflation, geopolitics are something which are kind of hands and glove with gold prices. So they typically tend to react in a faster way than any other news. I believe that this is going to be the nature of the market for the next few years, and that is going to keep the prices elevated.
No, I was asking in context because Kishore said and Siddharth echoed saying that globally interest rates may start looking at to cut down or from Q1 or Q2 of the next financial year. In that context, normally we all understand that gold is a hedge, barring the geopolitical, because that's where you run towards safety. But other than in normal scenario, if interest rates are going to start coming down and things are going to ease out, and the way the Chandan says the equity market will keep delivering, then the pressure on gold price or people's consumption on gold should ideally be lower,
So
right?
I don't see that there is going to be a significant pressure. See, I'll give a 50-year analysis. 50-year, in the last 50 years, whenever there has been a series of rate cuts in the US, it has been very positive for gold prices. Ideally, what we are going through a series of rate hikes and gold moving is not theoretically what is correct. So when we see that rate cuts are going to be the nature of the market, say probably 2 quarters from now, 4 quarters from now, and that is going to be the next trigger for gold prices, and that is when I see that gold
I
prices
think next generation will benefit from that. We all didn't read in economics book that this can happen.
Actually,
Kishore
the
said it will all change.
rate cuts drives the assets which are not paying you interest.
Interest.
Right.
That's right.
So the two major assets which doesn't pay you interest is one is gold, or precious metals, whatever you can say, and the other is the digital assets, the Bitcoin and so-called cryptocurrencies, which is non-interest bearing asset, or you cannot, whatever, it's speculative,
Correct.
whatever instrument you can say. Right, so these two will benefit. Actually, that's what the Bitcoin is showing. Actually,
I want to ask you that only. Since you touched on Bitcoin, or so-called cryptocurrency, that also in 2023 has seen a roller coaster, right? Going down and suddenly going up, and now people talking about that you may have a very soon exchange traded fund or getting listed on exchange, and that's why the prices again gone upwards.
Yeah, just for the clarification of the viewers, So the ETFs are not going to be in India, right? The cryptocurrency
India, but I don't
ETFs
know how
are
many
not
people
going to be in
invest from
India,
there.
right? So we're talking about in the global perspective. Yes, I think US regulators are going to allow ETFs of cryptos. That's actually driving the current rally also, and the expectation that interest rates will fall, because that's where the non-interest yielding assets will normally benefit. So the downfall of crypto was two things. One is that the regulatory pressures that a lot of countries banning or putting a lot of things, and still then second is the rates going up, because if you keep your money in dollars you're earning interest, and if you're keeping your money in cryptos you're not. So if the only thing which you can earn when you're keeping money in cryptos is the speculative returns or the asset appreciation returns which you can get, which is not really the purpose of money, right? It's not, the asset appreciation is not the purpose. So, and there is huge amount of clamp down on crypto, and the scams, the kind of bubble bursting happened in exchanges has actually brought it down. Now, what we see is a lot of cleanup has happened. I'm not saying entire cleanup has happened. A lot of cleanup has happened. So, which can actually restore some of the faith in some of the exchanges. Again, there are many exchanges which are shady. Even the world's largest crypto exchange, which is called Binance, is not disclosing where its headquarters is. No, you can understand how shady it could be, right? So, these assets generally perform in an interest rate falling scenario. So, gold at an all-time high, when an interest rate is all-time high, what happens if the US interest rates go from 5% to 1% over the next 3 years? Right? I think you can safely see 20-25% kind of returns in the next 2 years, right? And if you look at a longer term perspective, 50 years, as Navneet was, 50 years देखेंगे ना, आपका equity, gold, both will give you around 14-15% CAGR. It's cycles might be different. At the end of a longer term period, most of the asset classes give you that.
Just to give you a perspective, with this data from 1990 to now, the CAGR return of Nifty was 13.1,
Yeah.
and gold in Indian rupee terms was
Yeah.
10.1.
Yeah.
So there are 300 basis difference.
Just to add, Kishore was telling about crypto, right? I keep on watching crypto chart. Technical really works well, but can't comment much because of the regulatory things.
Correct.
Talking about gold and all, Navneet said, right, gold may glitter, silver may shine, but equity is going to be evergreen. Right? Okay. So yeah,
अगर
we
इतना
totally
अगर
believe. We
interest
totally
rate
believe.
कट होता है ना, अगर 5% का 1% होता है, just imagine the kind
all
of
equity market.
All asset classes.
the kind of FI flows into emerging markets, and in that India's weightage has only gone up in the last several years. So
It's not a competition between asset classes.
No, I'm just talking about
established that
yeah.
equity is going to shine and India
Any return share to go to any other asset.
Ha, that's
Other than
something,
equity.
No, I'll tell
something
you,
interesting.
even Navneet convinced me to buy SGB, and I think he convinced me that that is the right way to invest.
See,
right?
if for Indian investors, I'm saying, not the traders, if you have to get exposure into gold, other than the ornaments, because वो तो आपको ज्वेलरी तो
Sentimental
खरीदना ही है,
value है।
आपको घर पे जाना है, आपको सुख शांति चाहिए घर पे, तो आपको ज्वेलरी तो चाहिए, वो अलग बात है, वो साइड में रख के आपको गोल्ड में इन्वेस्टमेंट करना है, तो sovereign gold bond is one of the best options available, and long term returns तो we have seen. I think first bond has now just matured, I think, right? The first bond has just matured. 8 years में, I think 120% returns plus it's a tax-free returns. Tax-free returns. So I think it's a phenomenal, fantastic instrument.
Investment in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.